I am with the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, Office of Strategic Programs, and on behalf of all of my FDA colleagues, I'd like to welcome you to today's patient-focused drug development meeting on non-tuberculous mycobacterial lung infections, NTM lung infections. So we're just very thankful that you're here, and we're looking forward to a really great day of learning from you and listening to you and your perspectives. So what I'd like to do is just spend a few minutes going over the agenda and a few housekeeping remarks, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're going to start the day today with some FDA presentations. My FDA colleagues will provide an overview of the Patient-Focused Drug Development Initiative, background on NTM and current treatment options, and then I'll come back and provide an overview of the discussion format. So we have two topics for today, as you know. Topic one is on the most significant symptoms of NTM lung infections and how they impact your daily life. Topic two is on patient perspectives on current approaches to treating NTM. So for each topic, we have a panel discussion followed by a group discussion, and we'll take a break between each of those discussion topics. Then we'll break for lunch, and then in the afternoon we have a scientific workshop with some really great experts in the field that will be presenting a range of presentations on NTM lung infections and the epidemiology and clinical trial design and so forth. So it should be a very interesting discussion. So a few housekeeping items. Restrooms are back out into the lobby. If you make a right and go all the way down the hallway, you'll see the restrooms there. We also have a kiosk that you may have seen out in the foyer area again. It sells basic coffee, sandwiches, snacks, and so forth. So please make yourself comfortable if you need to get up and stretch, if you need to go grab a snack, or if you need to use the restroom, please feel free to do so. We want you to be as comfortable as possible. And next thing, you can feel free to pre-order your lunch if we have that 45-minute lunch break in the middle. But during break, if you'd like to, you're welcome to go and just let them know what you'd like to order, and they'll have it all ready for you if you don't want to have to wait too long in line. All right, I do have a few notes down here, so I'm just going to go through them for some of the reminders. The shuttle bus that some of you may have taken, the NTM shuttle bus that brought many of you here, it's going to leave at 5:15 p.m. sharp. So if you're going to be taking the bus back, so please be sure to be there by 5:15. Next, just a reminder that we do have the screens around the room, so you can feel free to look at any of the screens. We're going to do some polling questions throughout the day. We're going to have the presentations, of course. You can feel free to look along to any of these slides, and that'll be great. And this meeting is being transcribed and recorded. So in about a week or 2 weeks or so, the transcript and the recording of the meeting will be available on the meeting website. But right after the meeting, we'll have the slides for the scientific workshop. They're already posted up there for the second half of the day, the scientific workshop. So you'll be able to find the slides there. I've been given a notice that you can just go to google.com, and search FDA NTM. And the very first link that comes up will take you to the slides. Under meeting materials, you can go there and you'll see the slides for the scientific workshop. All right? Okay, so on that note, let me ask my FDA colleagues to please introduce yourself.
Sure, I'm John Farley, Deputy Director of the Office of Antimicrobial Products at CDER.
Good morning, Sumati Nambia, Director, Division Anti-Infective Products, CDER FDA.
I'm Joe Turner, the Deputy Director for Safety in the Division of Anti-Infective Products at FDA CDER.
Hala Shamsuddin, Medical Officer, Division of Anti-Infective Products.
Selena Daniels, Reviewer with Clinical Outcome Assessment Staff here at CDER.
Jonathan Goldsmith. I'm the Associate Director of the Rare Diseases Program in the Office of New Drugs, CDER.
Jim Bonna, the Office of Orphan Products Development.
Good morning. I'm Teresa Mullen. I direct the Office of Strategic Programs in the Center for Drugs.
Thank you. And we have some colleagues over here.
Sarah Eggers in the Office of Strategic Programs.
Meghna Chalasani, the same office.
Graham Thompson, same office.
Sujita Vaidya, same office. Thank you. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Farley for his opening remarks.
Morning, everybody. I want to welcome everyone to this meeting on patient-focused drug development for non-tuberculous mycobacterial lung infections. And for the rest of the day, you'll probably hear that abbreviated as NTM because it's a pretty long name. As I mentioned, I'm from the Office of Antimicrobial Products within the Office of New Drugs here at FDA. Within our office, the Division of Anti-Infective Products reviews antibacterial drugs, including products that can help manage and treat NTM lung infections. And this afternoon, the panel discussion will be chaired by Dr. Smati Nambiar, the director of that division, who's seated to my left. We here at FDA are very happy to see so many patients and patient advocates in the audience. We know a number of you, and we're looking forward to getting to know all of you in the course of the day. I also understand that we have many more folks joining us on the web. For those of you in the room, we particularly appreciate you not only putting up with Washington traffic, but then putting up with a security system similar to that that you would face at an airport when you arrive today. At least they didn't hopefully make you take off your shoes. So today's meeting is one in a series of FDA's patient-focused drug development meetings, and Dr. Teresa Mullen will be talking about this initiative in more detail in a few minutes. What our division here has done a couple of times, which we found really helpful, is to have experts that we invite through the whole day, so the thought leaders in the country. And then this afternoon, once they've heard from patients, we get to talk about clinical trial design and moving drug development forward during the latter half of the day. And we found that to be a very useful discussion and a useful way of moving forward. As most of you know, NTM, or non-tuberculous mycobacteria, represent over 150 different species of naturally occurring organisms that are found in water and soil. In some people, these organisms infect the airways and lung tissue, and that can cause inflammation in the respiratory system. Symptoms include chronic cough, shortness of breath, fatigue, and a range of other symptoms that we'll be talking about this morning. Diagnosis of NTM lung disease is often delayed because the symptoms are similar to other lung diseases like emphysema or bronchitis. And Dr. Hala Shamsuddin will provide a bit more background on the disease and treatment options for you in a few minutes. This is a very important meeting for us. We fully understand that NTM lung infections are a serious condition and that there is unmet need for patients. It's FDA's responsibility to ensure that the benefits of a drug outweigh its risks. Therefore, having this kind of dialogue is extremely valuable for us. What we hear from you today can help us understand how patients view the benefits as well as the risks of treatments for NTM lung infections. We particularly want to hear from you today about the different ways your symptoms affect your daily life. It is also important to hear what you value in a treatment for NTM infections and what you would like to see in future treatments for you. It's important to remember that FDA is just one part of the drug development process. We at FDA do not develop drugs or conduct clinical trials. Drug companies, often working with researchers or patient communities, are the ones who conduct trials and submit applications for new drugs to us. However, we work closely with these drug companies throughout their drug development process. And what we hear from you this morning will be helpful to companies as well as ourselves as clinical trials for new NTM treatments are planned. This afternoon, we will have a panel of experts specifically discussing some challenges with the design of clinical trials to evaluate new treatments for NTM, and some ways forward to meet those challenges. I know there are a lot of representatives from industry, academia, and others in the room and on the web. I want to thank you again for being here and being a part of this important discussion. So now I'll turn the microphone over to Dr. Teresa Mullen, who will talk about our broader efforts in patient-focused drug development.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everyone. And I want to echo Dr. Farley in welcoming you here today, and I'm glad you were able to get here on time. I know I got snagged in the traffic a little bit myself. I'm going to take a few minutes to tell you about this patient-focused drug development initiative. This meeting is one that we are able to organize and provide as part of that initiative. And as John was saying, one of the most fundamental responsibilities of FDA is to ensure that the benefits outweigh the risks of a drug that we approve or allow to be on the market. And part of that decision is looking at the clinical context, as we call it, which is to say, how severe is this condition? What is the impact on the patient's life? What other treatments are already available, so that we're not allowing anything on the market that offers less benefit or more risk and is not offering as much to the patient as what may already be available. So those two components are questions we're going to be probing extensively this morning in our meeting. The impact of the disease on your life, and what you're doing today to treat your condition and how well that's working or not working for you. We realized that the patient's perspective on benefit risk was absolutely critical, because patients have that unique perspective of experiencing any benefit that there is to gain from a drug, and also experience the harm. And so their perspective on benefit risk is extremely important. But before we started this initiative in 2012, we didn't really have a systematic way to collect that information. We have a patient representative program, which is extremely valuable, but that really allows us to get one person, really to one or two, to provide and speak for the whole community. And we know there's a lot of diversity of experience in the patient communities for each disease. So this initiative allows us a more systematic way to collect that information, to hear from a broader set of patients, a community of the people who are experiencing the disease and the people who are care partners for those people with the disease. And so we started this initiative. We committed to do at least 20 such meetings. This is the 17th meeting. We're going to be doing more than 20 because it's been so valuable. We're trying to do as many as we are able to do with the available folks that we have on our staff. And each one, it focuses on a particular disease and tries to really systematically go at getting that kind of input. We began, as I said, in September of 2012. We put out a Federal Register notice with about 40 diseases where we asked input on which should we focus on, which diseases should we focus on. We got about 4,500 comments from the public on that list, and we got many more nominations of diseases. We've worked with the divisions to try to come up with a list that we are working through and for this initiative, and we've been learning an awful lot about how to do this and how to actually allow for others to do it as well, collect this kind of information. Here's a snapshot for you of the diseases that we are covering over this 5-year period. And as you can see today, we're doing the non-tuberculous mycobacterial lung infections as our meeting focus today. In each of these meetings, we focus, as I said, on those questions related to impact of the disease on your life and what you're doing to treat it, but we also try to focus questions on what the review division, what else the review division doctors are interested in probing and trying to understand. It's a unique opportunity to have you here, so we try to take advantage of that opportunity to learn as much as we can about other aspects. Sometimes the questions are related to your perspective on benefit and risk and the trade-offs and what constitutes a meaningful benefit. That question has come up sometimes for us also. Your attitude toward participating in trial, your ability to participate in trials. Questions of those kinds are very interesting to understand better from the patient's perspective and help give us insight. After we do these meetings, we leave a docket open to receive more comments. People who are not able to be here, or even those of you who are here, may think of other things you want to tell us or share with us, And so we leave a public docket open for a few months to be able to collect additional information. We take that information as well as what we hear in the room and on the webcast and develop a voice of the patient report. It takes us several months to put these together and get them up on our website, but that's where we'll have it. And I think as Eugenia was saying, I know I at least find things on our website by using Google. They hate to admit that, but that's the easiest way for me to find stuff on our website. So we would recommend you use Google to find the voice of the patient reports. But these reports are we try to capture in the way the way you describe your experience in your words. And we try hard to not change that, to capture it just the way you've told it to us. So it provides a good record for reviewers to subsequently use and refer to when they're doing reviews for drugs that may come in to treat NTM. And it also provides information as a basis for other things we might do. For example, if we're trying to, a sponsor or patient groups want to work together or separately to form patient-reported outcome tools that could be used in clinical trials to better capture that aspect of your experience from your perspective, it helps to provide some useful input into that kind of further development as well. So with that, I'll stop, and thank you again so much for joining us today, and we very much look forward to hearing what you have to tell us. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, and welcome again for being here. This will be a very general overview on NTM lung infections, and I will be focusing the talk mainly on the disease in the United States rather than a global overview, and that's mainly due to time restrictions. How do I move the slides? Okay, like I said, this is going to be a very brief overview. Non-tuberculous mycobacteria, there are more than 150 species, and a handful of them cause human disease. And you're going to hear some of the names repeated throughout this workshop. In the United States, Mycobacterium avium complex, or referred to as MAC, accounts for most of the cases, approximately 70 to 80%, with M. abscessus accounting for most of the remainder. It is acquired, the organisms are acquired by inhalation from the environment, and water is thought to be the main source. This is a map of the United States, and the darker areas represent areas where there are more cases of the disease, and as you can see, there are more cases along coastal lines. Who is at risk for this infection? And it's generally people who have underlying lung disease and or a genetic predisposition. By and large, the major group in the United States tend to be patients with bronchiectasis, which is a condition where there is damage and scarring of the airways. And in that group falls a category of patients with a very specific body type. These tend to be mainly slender women. However, the other categories include patients with cystic fibrosis, chronic obstructive lung disease, and smokers, patients who had prior tuberculosis where this NTM may occur in areas that were previously involved with TB. And then other conditions such as alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, which results in lung damage, primary ciliary dyskinesia, where people can't clear their secretions, and some people who are immune compromised. Generally, patients will present with cough, but the other symptoms include shortness of breath, sputum production, coughing up blood, chest pain, fatigue, weight loss, and sometimes fever. And as you can see, all these symptoms are not really unique or specific to NTM lung infections. They may occur in patients who have underlying lung disease of any cause or any other infection. On X-ray, you can find cavities or nodules, and generally there is a positive culture from the sputum or the lung. How common are these infections in the United States? So generally, NTM lung infection is what we consider an orphan disease, which means it generally affects less than 250,000 people in the United States. But there is a general consensus that the disease is increasing, both in the general population and in patients with cystic fibrosis. The estimates vary depending on where you are geographically, but approximately 8 per 100,000 people are infected. But this number increases with age, and this increases to approximately 20 per 100,000 people in people older than 50 years of age, and to 47 per 100,000 in those older than 70 years of age. This is a survey of the prevalence of the disease, and how many people is it present in the Medicare population. As you can see, the increase is both in men and women. Why are NTM lung infections increasing? And there are several possible reasons. The first is probably increased awareness among physicians. The other is increased number of susceptible individuals. As the population gets older, there are patients with more chronic lung disease. There are more people who are immune compromised. Cystic fibrosis patients are surviving longer, and there's possibly increased exposure. So I'm going to switch gears to treatment, and we'll hear more about treatment later this afternoon, so I'm not going to go into it in much detail. But briefly, there are no FDA-approved drugs for NTM lung infections. Physicians in practice will use antibiotics that are approved to treat tuberculosis or other bacterial infections. And in general, these antibiotics that are used, so-called off-label, may be used for longer durations and in different populations than those in which they were approved in. And sometimes the side effect profile may be different. In general, antibiotic combinations are recommended, and usually 3 or more drugs, which may include an injectable drug. But the optimal combination of drugs, the optimal doses, and the optimal duration of both the injectable and the overall treatment regimen have not really been rigorously evaluated. The treatment is lengthy, with the goal of therapy is achieving negative sputum cultures for 12 consecutive months. In a study from 2004 to 2005, the median number of antibiotics that a patient had required was 5, with a range of 1 to 10. And the median number of treatment days was approximately 8 years, with a range that was anywhere between 3 months and 20 years. The cost per patient in a year was approximately $20,000, but it could go as high as $70,000. And patients who had M. abscessus were associated with higher treatment costs. So the number of antibiotics used is rather large for a long treatment of time, but the side effect profile is also significant. In this same study, the adverse reactions were reported in 50% of patients for those receiving the commonly used drugs, and in everybody who used the less commonly used drugs. So now that we kind of painted a rather grim picture, what are the challenges to developing a new drug? And there are many. The first one is that the disease progression really varies by the underlying lung disease, by the appearance on chest X-ray, and by the infecting organism. A patient who has bronchiectasis and treatment and is infected with Mycobacterium avium and has nodular disease will have a different disease course than somebody who has cavitary disease or somebody with cystic fibrosis or infected with Mycobacterium abscessus. The response to treatment varies. So the progression of the disease varies, the treatment response varies. And so a drug that works for one NTM species in one patient population does not necessarily work in another NTM species or another patient population. It may be difficult to extrapolate from one population to another or from one organism to another. Treatments are lengthy, therefore trials are lengthy. And when trials are lengthy, this poses problems with feasibility. And finally, the endpoints for these trials have not been well defined, and we will hear more about that in the afternoon as well. So we will need to define assessments in those clinical trials that occur early in the course so we can get a drug to market sooner rather than waiting at least a year for the sputum to be consistently negative. So in conclusion, NTM lung infections are increasing in the United States. The affected populations are mainly patients with bronchiectasis and patients with underlying lung disease. We have no approved FDA therapies for this condition. The currently used treatments are multiple drugs used off-label for lengthy periods of time and are associated with significant side effects. So we realize that there is a huge unmet medical need. But having said that, we also have many challenges to drug development that hopefully we will have a chance to discuss further this afternoon. Thank you. Thank you all for coming again.
Thank you to my FDA colleagues for your presentations. So what I'd like to do now is go over the discussion format. As I mentioned earlier, we have two topics that we're going to be diving into today. Topic 1 is on the most significant symptoms of NTM lung infections and how they impact you in your daily life. So what we're listening for here is what are the symptoms that are most important to you, that matter most to you, and how do they affect your ability to do activities? Is there something that you can't do as fully as you would like, or you can't do at all because of the symptoms that you experience? We also want to hear how your symptoms have evolved or changed over time. Tell us what it's like on a good day, on an average day, and on your bad days. What do those symptoms look like? And how has your symptoms impacted your life, not just physically, but emotionally, socially? What are all the different ways that your symptoms have impacted you? In topic 2, we're going to be listening to patient perspectives on their approaches to treating NTM lung infections. So here what we're listening for is what are you currently doing to treat the NTM lung infection, and how well is it, or is it working, or if not, what's not working about it? What are the downsides that you're experiencing because of your treatment regimen? And what would you look for in an ideal treatment? We're also in topic 2 going to have a scenario slide that will present to patients to hear your immediate thoughts on participating in a clinical trial. We're going to put some information up and talk to you for a few minutes about what are the first things that come to mind. We are going to have a portion in our afternoon session in the scientific workshop that's going to go into greater detail on considerations of clinical trial designs and so forth. But we want to first hear some thoughts from you on what matters to you in clinical trials. So first we're going to hear from a panel of patients and caregivers. So on that note, could I please have our topic 1 panelists come on up and have a seat? So the purpose of the panel discussion is to really set a solid foundation for our greater discussion. And our panelists have worked so hard over the last few weeks to put their thoughts down, and we really appreciate that you're all here to share them with us. I've had the honor of working with them for the last week and a half, so I know they're going to do an excellent job, as are our topic 2 panelists. So our panel reflects a range of experiences with NTM lung infections, and they'll each have about 5 minutes to present their remarks. So after our panel is done, we're going to then expand on the dialogue, broaden it, to hear from more of you, more patients and caregivers in the audience, to provide your perspectives. And what we encourage you to do here is build on what you've heard from the panel. So share not only what's similar, but what's different for you, and how do you experience your symptoms and how they impact you. So periodically we'll ask some questions along the way. I'll look to my FDA panel to ask some questions along the way. And if you're comfortable to do so, you can raise your hand, and we'll have some microphone runners around the room. They'll come to you, and you can state your name and just present your remarks. Okay? So another way that we're going to be learning from you is through this opportunity to answer polling questions. So you should, I believe we've already passed out the clickers. Patient representatives, you should have these clickers in front of you, these little white remote-looking things. And this is not a scientific survey. It's completely voluntary. Oh, it looks like we have some hands raised that need clickers. Okay. So it's completely voluntary for patients and patient representatives. And It's another way for us at the FDA to hear about the perspectives in the room and also for those on the webcast. So we'll do some questions in just a little bit, and you can use your clickers to respond to those questions. For those of you on the web, you can also participate in these polling questions by answering them through the webcast. And for those of you on the web, we have about, I believe, 70 or so people on the web, so we have a very active web session going right now. We can't see you web participants, but you are a very, very important part of this meeting. We encourage you to continue providing your thoughts through the webcast, and periodically I'll check in with my colleagues to provide a summary of what we're hearing on the web. And we'll also, towards the end of each topic discussion, we'll go to the phones and we'll hear some of the people joining us on the webcast provide their thoughts over the phone. And last but not least, a very, very important part of our discussion, another way that we would like to hear from you is through this public docket. The public docket, you see the website here, and you'll also find it on the slides once they're posted on the web. But this docket will be open for 2 months after this meeting, so until December 15th. And it's really a great way to continue the dialogue. I encourage all of you to, if there's something that you didn't get to share here, or if there's something else that comes to mind, please submit those comments in the public docket. They are all part of this meeting record, and as we, after you submit all your comments, we will go through and read each and every one of those, and they will be incorporated into our summary report. And anybody is welcome to comment, not just patients and patient representatives. I would like to share some additional resources at the FDA that will be very useful for you. One is the FDA Office of Health and Constituent Affairs, which we call OCA. You have their contact information here. And then the other is within the within the Office of Center Director, we have the Professional Affairs and Stakeholder Engagement Team, PACE. Which has been collaborating with us to, provide outreach for this meeting and help with getting so many of you here. So thank you for that. Okay, and then we do have some discussion ground rules for today. This meeting is really about the patients and the caregivers to do the talking today. We really have so much to learn from you, and we are looking to you to really, lead that dialogue. So FDA is here to listen. We will be in listening mode. We know that there's academia, industry, other government agencies here, and this meeting is very important to you too. We just ask that you stay in listening mode. The discussion is going to stay, we're going to do our best to stay on topic. So the discussion is on symptoms and treatments. We know that there's many aspects to treating NTM lung infections, and we're not going to be able to address all of those aspects in this meeting. So whatever else comes to mind that's outside the scope of topic 1 or topic 2, we ask that you share those during the open public comment period, which we took registration for. There was a sign-up sheet out on the registration desk, and we'll take registration up through lunch break. We'll see how many people sign up, and then we can decide how, we'll see how much time each speaker will have. Again, I'm going to put another plug-in for the public docket, another place to continue submitting your remarks that you didn't get to say today. The views expressed today are personal opinions, and on that note, respect for one another is paramount. And then finally, let us know how the meeting went for you today. We're going to be passing out evaluation forms probably during break time. They're very important to us, so please fill them out and let us know what worked and didn't work. Okay? All right, so first what we would like to do is do some polling questions. So you should all have a clicker of patients and patient representatives, and those of you on the panel, you have it too. Okay, so let's do our first one to practice. Where do you live? Press A for within the DC metro area, or B for outside of the DC metro area.
Yeah, it looks like it's bugged, so maybe
Sorry?
just a show of hands or something for now.
Oh, okay, okay. Looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulty.
Never mind, we're good now.
Oh, we're good. We're good. Okay. So if you see this and this between us over here, you'll know what's going on. Okay, so it looks like it's working. Let's see the results.
It's a little slow. So
Oh, it's a little slow. Okay. Just like traffic today because of that water main break, it's a little slow.
why don't we go to the web first?
Okay.
Sorry.
So on the web, we have about 91% outside of DC and 9% from inside the DC metro area.
I think we can do a show of hands, right? No problem. Oh, well, there it is. So it looks like most of you actually, the majority of you came from outside the DC metro area, so thank you for being here. And for all of our local neighbors, thank you also for being here. Let's go on to the next question. Have you ever been diagnosed as having an NTM lung infection? Press A for yes or B for no. Okay, so it looks like over 2/3 of you in the room said yes, so we are going to hear some really great perspectives from you all today. Thank you. Okay. All right, for your age, press A for younger than 18, B 18 to 30, C 31 to 50, D 51 to 60, E 61 to 74, or F 75 or greater. Yes? This is just for patients and patient representatives, yep. And caregivers. Oh, just patients for this one. Well, unless you're a caregiver answering on behalf of a patient. Okay, so it looks like just about half of you in the room are within that 61 to 74 age group, but it looks like we have a very nice distribution of folks between 18 to 75 or greater. Okay? Okay, again, for patients or caregivers answering on behalf of a patient, are you male or female? Okay, it looks like mostly all of you in the room are female or you're here representing a female. Okay? All right, what is the length of time since your NTM diagnosis? A, less than 1 year ago, B, 1 to 2 years ago, C, 2 to 5 years ago, D, more than 5 years ago, or E, I'm not sure. Okay, so it looks like about half of you in the room have been diagnosed for more than 5 years. But again, it looks like we have several of you that are within this range of newly diagnosed to about 2 to 5 years ago. Okay? All right, what is your underlying lung condition? A, cystic fibrosis, B, bronchiectasis, and I apologize if I mispronounce anything, C, COPD or emphysema, D, other lung disease, E, a condition that's not mentioned here, or F, I don't know. Okay, so almost over 70% of you voted for B, followed by, let's see, and it seems that we do have some other, we have a little bit of everything here. We'll make sure that when we hear from you during the group discussion, if you can also maybe mention what that underlying lung condition is, if you identified that you had another lung disease or a condition not mentioned here. Okay, and then can I just see what we heard on the web?
Web results are pretty much the same as what was in the room.
Okay, great. All right, so on that note, I would like to get started with our panelists for topic 1. You'll just press the red button on your microphone when it's your turn to speak, and then when you're done, you just press it to turn it off again. So we're going to start with Katie.
Good morning, everyone. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for paying attention to NTM. This has been a dream of mine for the past 14 years. I was 39 years old when I started not feeling well and have been dealing with this for a long time. I am speaking on behalf of a lot of patients who unfortunately cannot be here or on the webinar or just are too sick to join us today. And also many other friends who were in our original New York City area support group who have passed away, and others who have passed away throughout the country who we had befriended over the years. The support we had given each other was enormous. I am just really, I have hope now that something is going to happen. I am a nurse and long-term care administrator by background, and when I was diagnosed, I researched online, and there were very few articles, very few. I even went to New York City Library and Medline and tried to get everything I possibly could, and there was hardly anything there. NIH had been studying NTM for 37 years. Mycobacteria was first identified over 100 years ago, but I felt so alone as a nurse, and I had nowhere to turn to. It took me a period of time, a year searching. I started looking for a diagnosis, many different doctors throughout New Jersey. I eventually went to National Jewish, and then I traveled throughout the tri-state area looking for answers because I wasn't going to give up. I wanted a cure. I did not want to deal with this. I was too young, had too many things to do, and I had a young daughter. So I kept on looking, and eventually I found a support group, and history has gone on. It is an invisible disorder. I look healthy, and all of us in the group, when we have our support groups, people say to us, "Oh, you look good," and we're like ready to shoot them because they don't know how we feel. People complain if they have a cold and it wears them down for 2 or 3 days, but just imagine having a life that you feel like you're sick half the time. I also compare it to like the manic depressive lung diseases. You feel good a few days and then all of a sudden you are wiped. And it's very hard to live this type of life because you're on an emotional roller coaster. So again, I am really, really happy to be here. We have limited time, so I'll continue. The 3 symptoms that I experience that have the most impact on my life are fatigue and stamina. My day is based on personal energy. I plan out what I am going to do based on how I feel. When the weather changes, it greatly impacts my energy, humidity, the rain, etc. It really impacts what I'm able to do. I prioritize, of course, on activities of daily living, what I must do, and then add on other. There are some days I could function more than others, and on those days I get a lot more done because I know that it has this up and down curve. My stamina is just not what I was. I used to run 7 or 8 miles, and when I first was sick with my first NTM infection, I had to take a taxi cab in New York, 1 city block. My sister looked at me like, "Are you crazy spending money on a cab to go and block?" But you get so beat. Again, it's an invisible disorder. We don't have that unless you're losing weight, the apparent look that other diseases have. Okay. The lack of stamina has affected my ability to work full-time. I was at the height of my career in charge of quality assurance for the state. I could have really done really well in my career, but had to give that up due to this. When you can't plan that you can commit to projects, you are not going to really be productive. I do some per diem work, but there is not, you're unable to work full time. I envy people who can get up in the morning, take a shower. Since this is based in water, we don't take showers. We have to watch the water we drink. We only drink certain bottled water. We can't have water in restaurants. Every day, I have to be cognizant of what I can do to avoid an infection. And not being able to work, of course, takes a toll on your life. It leads to social isolation. We have a support group which helps us, but it really affects every aspect of your life, and you're not able to work full time. And I was 39, so I had financial goals, which unfortunately cannot be met. And you know, nobody thinks things are going to happen to them. We're like the 21-year-old, you know, guy, nothing's going to happen to us. I didn't think at 39 my life would change overnight. And being at this meeting, I have hope that in my lifetime, because when I found out it was being studied for 37 years, I thought never in my lifetime, since it was so long, that something would happen. But now there is hope. Being a patient daily, we do airway clearance. We do nasal washes, nebulizers, as needed. We go to the lab, we watch our diet. We're constantly in and out of remission. In February and in August are my two critical months, because February flu season, I often get pneumonia, and in August with the humidity. So in August, I don't go out. Most people go to barbecues and outdoor events. I have a young daughter, and I stay in a lot because I don't want to take the risk of getting sick. Many of us feel like we should live in a bubble, but then we won't live a quality life. Sometimes we push, and I do go out to places that I'm not, and then I end up sick, and everybody says to me, what the heck did you do that for? But after a while, with every kind of illness, it's easy to get non-compliant. It takes a toll on you over time. Okay, the third symptom is coughing, constantly coughing up into a tissue. Years ago when I first had this condition, I'd walk to the restroom, but over time it's gotten worse and you just can't help it. I'm not going to walk to the restroom. You just cough up because the bronchiectasis has gotten worse, and you do cough up in tissues, and it's repulsive to some. But I'm just like blinded now because it's, you know, over time it just has increased. Question number 2, specific activities that are important to you that I can't do. I used to run. I can't run. I walk. I watch every water. We can't do planting. We can't wear perfumes. Or terrified of mold. No hot tubs. No indoor pools. I had to move to a home with hardwood floors. No rugs. Radiator heat is the best because forced air is really bad for people with lung problems. No humidifiers. No fireplaces. No barbecue pits. I had to leave church recently because the incense, all these respiratory irritants that bother you. We don't go to crowded places, movies, in fear of getting respiratory infection. I travel much less frequently. Again, I was a nurse, but I won't go into a hospital or a nursing home or other healthcare facility because I'm fearful of getting sick. I get sick like that, and it doesn't last for 2 days. It goes off into a pneumonia. Examples of severe fatigue, it just comes upon you at times. I've been in the grocery store with the shopping cart, but didn't have the energy to wait in line to check out. That's how severe the fatigue becomes at times. And we laugh in our support groups on how it suddenly creeps up on you. Other things I can't do, exercise. I try to exercise and push, but there are some days I just can't, and I know it helps, but I just can't. How does your condition change over time? It has taken a toll, and I try to deal with the new normal, but it has gotten worse, and the duration for recovering is a lot longer. What makes your symptoms better? Doing everything, all the suggestions that I have on the website to prevent infections makes it better. But at times, after 14 years, you get tired of getting up every morning and doing chest airway clearance, and every patient has patient burnout after a while. What worries me most about the condition, when I first researched, there was no new antibiotics on the market. All the money was going into all the psychotropics and all the sexual drugs at that time. Now we are being paid attention to, which makes me really happy, because years ago I was worried that I was going to have an infection, there was nothing going to be available. Other worries are...
Any final remarks, Katie?
Excuse me?
Any final remarks?
I just really happy that we are here, and that I hope that we can just go forward getting the antibiotics and the research that we really need to improve the quality of life for all of those out there.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much. Next, we have Barbara.
Good morning. And I echo Kathleen's comments about just the gratefulness for everybody that's here, especially those of you at FDA. Being here for me, although I live in Indiana now, is a lot like coming home. I spent my whole working career with the Department of Health and Human Services, specifically with the Office of General Counsel advising the Public Health Service. Though I didn't interface a lot with FDA, I do recognize some names still. So it's a lot like coming home for me. You know, there's a commercial on TV. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I see this commercial from time to time. A woman's walking through the woods, and she begins something like, I'm only in my 60s. Nice, long life ahead. Big plans. And when I see that commercial, it kind of irks me a little bit because I thought, well, that's me. I'm in my 60s. I love to hike, walking through the woods, big plans. And then unexpectedly, NTM changed some of those plans. 2 years ago, after I retired from this department, I had retina eye surgery. And I had to be face down for 2 weeks on a kind of a cot, and I was yay off the floor. And I thought, well, that's kind of hard. You know, I'm going to sleep face down for 2 weeks. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I thought, phew, I'm glad that's over with. And I stood up and I coughed. And I haven't stopped coughing since I came from eye surgery. I met with lots of specialists, pulmonologists, ENT, allergists, internal med, a lot of famous docs even here in the Washington, D.C. area. Nobody could figure out why I was coughing. Finally, I have a wonderful physician here in Bethesda, and he said, Barb, let's go to National Jewish. And so that was really key. In 2004, went to National Jewish. They performed a whole lot of tests, and they diagnosed me with NTM, along with several other diseases, bronchiectasis. I'm alpha-1 deficient. So we at least knew what we were dealing with. Physically, I'd say I'm just tired. You know, last night I was at the meet and greet, and I was telling the woman and gentleman I was talking with, hey, I'm going to faint here in a minute. So, you know, I had to sit down. I'm just so tired. You know, and that's so unusual for me. I saw both my parents active in their 70s and 80s. And before I got NTM, I was very active. I held a very demanding job in the Office of General Counsel. A couple years after retirement, I was walking, hiking, biking, caring for parents. I'm now very careful about my energy level, as Kathleen said. I may wash windows, but it may take me all day. Wash a window, sit down, rest. Wash another window, sit down, and rest. And so things that once took a few minutes may take the whole day. I wear a mask when I'm in the garage or cleaning to prevent further infection. I no longer fix really large meals. If I want to do anything else during the day, I've got to fix a meal that doesn't zap my energy level. So instead of having this much energy, I feel like I've got this much energy, and I'm careful how I allocate it. I joined exercise classes at the Y. I thought, well, I mean, it's kind of a new city, a good way to know people, and I dropped 2 of those classes just because I couldn't keep up. And those classes were for seniors. There were people in those classes in their 70s and 80s, and I thought, good grief. You know, I've always been kind of the leader in the exercise, and now I can't keep up with people who are much older than I am. I still exercise a lot. I go to the Y on a daily basis, but it's more individualized. In fact, I'm in a a class for cardiac rehab, but, you know, I'm getting the exercise, whatever it takes. So my big plans for the 60s have changed. I'm 67 now. I've had NTM for at least 2 years. But it's affecting not just my physical life. I'm certainly fatigued. I'm certainly coughing. I have a lot of shortness of breath. But it's affecting social life, which I don't like either. I'm often embarrassed because I've got to excuse myself and go cough up my lungs for an hour. Or I'm going out to lunch with a friend and I have to call and say, you know, I've got to cough up for another 45 minutes or so, and then we'll have lunch. So recently I was trying to clear my lungs. I was, I guess, sitting on the front stoop or whatever. Cough, spit, you know. And my neighbor came rushing over. I had no idea she could hear me, but she came rushing over. Should I call 911? I said, no, you know, go back. I'll go in the house and finish coughing. So it's just an embarrassment a lot of times. And I guess I have some fear of the future. I'm single. I thought, well, gee, I can take good care of myself, you know, physically active. But now, I don't know, I've declined a lot in the last couple of years. What's the next couple of years going to be like? The next panel will talk a little bit more about treatment. I began treatment in August, late August, and 3 weeks later I was so sick. In fact, last week I was in bed 3 days just shaking and thinking, well, am I going to be able to be here or not? So I came off the drugs, but I don't know what the future holds for me who can't take the 3-drug cocktail. What's it going to look like 2 years from now or 4 years from now? And so I guess my goal is to push myself as much as I can to remain active, notwithstanding the fatigue, the shortness of breath, the coughing. But to remain positive as I go through the future. And, you know, as with Kathleen, I remain hopeful that together we can work together to find some answers. Maybe not the final answer, but at least the next step forward. How do we get this before the people, even in the department? How do we get it before the commissioner of FDA? How do we get this issue before the secretary of HHS? And those are the things, and I look forward to any questions you have later.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Philip?
I'm delighted to be here. Those of you who've met me before know that I usually have some notes, and then usually I listen to what people have to say and go in a different direction. Today is no exception. I'm here because Fern is not, because she cannot speak for the illness that she battled from the time she was in her 40s. I'm not going to go into defining what NTM is or any of that, because that's been done. What I'd like to talk about is what it does. And frankly, you can't separate symptoms and impacts on daily life of the disease from the treatment, because they really do go hand in hand. Both affect the ability to live and the quality of life. In Fern's case, she was on multiple drugs for 18 years. She had, and this is not a misquote, over 26,000 IV infusions during the period of her treatment. They were difficult to tolerate. I'm delighted so many patients are here, doctors, scientists, and FDA. So in her case, we knew that the treatments extended her life. From the time she was diagnosed until the very last day, there was a smile on her face and optimism. But it did have an impact. What we're hearing from Kathy, Barbara, what I'm sure you're going to say, Marilyn, and others, is fatigue. The inability to be spontaneous, get up, take a quick shower, go out and live your life. Your life changes because your life is planned around the treatments and the impacts of the disease. From the treatments, Fern had loss of hearing. Not complete, but she could read lips. Her eyesight was affected. She was still able to drive until she didn't have enough energy to do that. Part of that was from the disease, the long-term inflammation. Part of it was from the drugs. We know that. So while treatments help, they extend life, at times improve life, those treatments are not a cure. In fact, I would challenge anybody to define a cure for NTM because we really don't know what a cure means. Because even if you're culture negative, it comes back. So we need to start by defining what are the goals. In my mind, the goals are to extend life and improve quality of life, reduce the amount of fatigue, increase stamina, decrease the number of exacerbations because everybody with this disease has an exacerbation. We need to have treatments that will be less toxic and more effective. And I'm thrilled because you all are listening. So many patients are here, whereas years ago, we would have come to an empty room. So many doctors are looking at it, and industry is here. They were here with us last night. They're here now. And while we heard earlier that the treatments are off-label, one of the things needed is to really have some trials to understand the existing treatments that are used off-label. What do they really do? What's the role of the new drugs? Because we know that they're needed, but we need to better understand the current treatments and what that means. There's a history of drug resistance that's acquired over time. We now know from more sophisticated testing over the last few years that if you have a certain gene, certain strains, they're going to be more inherently resistant. But with the newer technology, those treatments can be refined. But we know this is very different than a typical drug approval because many patients are on treatment for a very, very long time, many months to many years, and that has a different impact. And I think that many of the patients, including my wife, took the approach that there were some calculated risks in order to extend life and try to improve quality. Those are individual decisions made with their physicians. And I will tell you from a personal point of view, in 2009, with the help of a physician, a drug company, and approvals, Fern was given a drug on a compassionate use basis before it got on the market. It extended her life for 5 years. She saw her grandchildren grow. Everybody in this room who has the disease and every family member wants that same opportunity. That's why we're here. This is different than something that is a short-term treatment. I echo what all the patients are saying, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip. And now we have Marilyn.
Well, I'm thankful to be here, and I'm fortunate to be here. And I think I can come from a little bit of a different viewpoint than the people that have spoken. So I'm not going to repeat a lot of the symptoms that that caused me to be diagnosed finally after 5 years. Took me to be diagnosed. I began to feel tired and so forth. This was about 15 years ago. And I probably would have contributed a lot of the symptoms that we have to maybe aging. Because at one time or another, I had every one of those symptoms that was up there on the board this morning, except I never lost much weight. So, but the one symptom for me that actually got me through those 5 years to finally get a diagnosis was every morning getting up and coughing up green sputum. So for me, that has been the biggest thing that I've had to deal with. And it has affected everything in my life and still does. After I was diagnosed, I was on antibiotics for 5 years. And I have been off of any medications for about 2.5 years. So I guess I maybe represent life after drugs or life after medication. And I can tell you that I still have symptoms. And I still get up every morning and cough up sputum, which my sister, who's been staying with me for the last couple of days, can attest to. And I still have those days when I get up, and it doesn't seem like there's any known reason, but I cannot function very well. I can't think straight. I ache all over. Those days, if I can, I cancel everything and try to lay low. And in spite of the fact that I'm stabilized, my lung scans don't show that there's much more deterioration going on, and that's why one of the reasons why I'm not on medications right now. And I have been feeling pretty well most of the time. However, the symptoms of that nature, who knows? I mean, it feels as though we don't even know why suddenly those days happen. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's on the weekend. And that's the first thing for me as a patient that went, because I worked full-time through all the medication, had to work. I live alone, never been married, don't have, I'm not independently wealthy or anything, so I have to make a living. And through all of this, I have worked 5 days a week at least. However, I'm an interior designer, and I had to change my career totally, because there's nothing that can get me coughing faster than being on a construction site with a lot of dust and the nature of a construction site. And I used to be there at 7 in the morning, going over things with the contractors and being sure that it was done the way I planned it to be done. And I can't do that anymore. I still do a little decorating, but I can't make the kind of money that I used to make. Another thing that I did a lot of presentations. I traveled around the country on media tours for some corporations as an interior designer, and I even wrote a book on public speaking just about 15 years ago when I started to feel so poorly. And I have not been able to do that. A lot of my clients came from those, presentations and so forth. But to stand up and give a presentation without coughing or without being totally fatigued was pretty impossible. The good news is that I was just at NIH yesterday, and as I said, things are looking good. My scans are, everything's stabilized and so forth. And I won't have to come back again for a couple of years, but that doesn't mean that the symptoms are gone. As long as there's bronchiectasis, and we don't even have a clue about bronchiectasis, it seems to me, about bronchiectasis and how to deal with it. That's the underlying disease that I have, and that's there. The airways are already ruptured, and they are just sitting there waiting for MAI or some other bacteria to come and move in. I do a lot, of course, to prevent it. I was part of the Falkenhaim's water research and found that in my building, 600 apartments in New York City, that the water in the pipes in my building, everything in my building has the exact strain of MAI that I was diagnosed with initially. So I talked to Dr. Falkenhaim about, well, what can I do about this? And he's, at that time, I understand there's now some filters that will that we may be able to get for our homes, but there was nothing at that time. And he said the only thing to do was to boil my water. So I do that every day. I boil all my drinking water, all the water that I cook with. There are so many things that I do now to prevent and to take care of myself, and as Katie was saying, to prevent myself from being exposed so that I don't have as many exacerbations. I had one a month ago, and I had one 2 months before that. And, you know, it's not like a normal cold. You're out for at least a week with a fever and flu, like symptoms, eye ache all over kind of thing. And, you know, how do you keep, if you want to live your life, you're going to be exposed to these things. And I'll end on the high notes for me. When Dr. Olivia asked me yesterday what was new, I said, well, you know, what do you mean? What category are we talking about? And so suddenly I realized, well, what's really new with me is that for the first time in a long time, I was able to, I've always been singing all my life. There was a period of time when I was on the meds when I couldn't sing at all. I had no voice. And I don't know if you can tell what's happening in my voice right now, the stuff that's hanging down there, etc. Well, I wasn't even able to sing at all. And sometimes I couldn't speak very much either. So for the first time in many years, in June, I gave a performance on stage, off Broadway, so to speak, and sang. So that's been very exciting to me to be able to sing again. And I also was able to give an hour's presentation, standing, with 15 minutes questions afterwards, for the first time, again, in about 15 years. So I'm one of the very fortunate people that has really benefited from all the research and everything that's happened in recent years. And I mean recent. I mean, when in New York City, it took 5 years to be diagnosed. That tells you how few people, even the medical profession, understood very little at that point. And today, through all the research and because of my experience, every research project that comes my way, I participate in because I want to be able to educate and have everybody know and understand this disease. So this is great to be here today, and this is so different than it was before all this happened. And when I was first diagnosed, the only thing that was online was people that had HIV or AIDS, and I was terrified. And I thought, well, it won't be long before I'm dead, you know? And then I found the support group. I'm in the same support group as Katie, and found out that it didn't necessarily mean you're going to die of this disease, but looks like I'm going to have it the rest of my life.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you for sharing that really positive story about being able to sing recently. That's really very nice to hear. Okay. So I would like to ask everyone to give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you for working so hard to prepare your comments and for being so courageous and sharing them with us. So what I'd like to do is a few show of hands exercise now. How many of you felt that you heard that what our panelists said, that some of it resonated with you? Many, many hands. Okay, I see at least a dozen hands that have been raised. So that's great to hear that there's a lot of similar experiences, and I know there must be some that are not similar too, so we look forward to hearing them. But I also want to ask, we heard some very interesting concepts, and I want to see by a show of hands if these also resonate with you. Katie mentioned weather changes it's a trigger for some of the symptoms. How many of you feel the same way? I see about 16 hands or so, 16 or 17 hands. We also heard about having to pace yourself for activities during the day. How about that? How many does that resonate with? Again, another 16, 18 hands I think I see. And then Marilyn brought up this difficulty in thinking. How about that? How about that concept? Which, again, we'll dive into in just a little bit, but I just want to see how many of you. Okay, so I'm seeing about 10 hands or so raised on that. Okay? All right, great. So why don't we get our clickers out? I want to do a polling question, which is going to help kick off this discussion. So again, patients and caregivers, if you could grab your clicker. Okay. So of all the symptoms you have experienced because of your NTM lung infection, which do you consider to have the most significant impact on your daily life? And you can choose up to 3 symptoms. Chronic cough, B, coughing up blood, phlegm, or mucus, C, shortness of breath or other breathing difficulties, D, fever or night sweats, E, loss of appetite, F, weight loss, G, fatigue or lack of energy, H, pain such as chest pain or shoulder pain, or I, other symptoms not mentioned. And again, for those of you on the web, you can answer through the webcast. Okay, so it looks like 80% of you voted for G, fatigue or lack of energy. So we'll definitely hear more on that. And then we see almost 40% or so a cough, coughing up blood, phlegm, and mucus, and shortness of breath. So we'll touch on those as well. We have several people that identified fever and night sweats, pain. We also have people that identified other symptoms not mentioned. So we'll be sure to get to those as well to hear from you. How about on the web? What do we see?
Pretty similar. We have 45% for chronic cough, 48% for coughing up blood, phlegm, mucus, 45% for shortness of breath, 21% for fever and night sweats, 12% for loss of appetite, 9% for weight loss, 75% for fatigue or lack of energy, 15% for pain, and 6% for other symptoms not mentioned.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's start with fatigue. Many of you voted for that, and we heard it on the panel too. So what I'd like to ask is if you can describe to us, how do you experience the fatigue? And as Philip mentioned, can you talk about maybe what exacerbates it, or what triggers it, or how do you cope with that? 1 second, we have a microphone coming to you.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Marcy Weiner. I was diagnosed about 8.5 years ago, and the fatigue, as one of our panelists stated, can come on very suddenly. And if I lie down, instead of taking maybe a doze for 10 or 20 minutes, which would have been normal, it might be 3.5 or 4 hours later I wake up and I'm not refreshed, and could maybe not find that I could move. Now, I'm fortunate so far to have a lighter case, but this still can happen. It's totally unpredictable. And you may not have any other symptoms along with it. There may be, at the time, no necessarily an increase in sputum, or no night sweats or fevers, or which you can put towards TB, etc., like that. So I think that this is the one thing, you heard this from the panelists, but it's very dramatic at times. And you could be driving along in the car between Massachusetts and Connecticut, and all of a sudden have to pull off to the side of the road, literally, and take that, and because your eyes are closing and you're going to just bottom out.
Okay, so fatigue that comes on very abruptly, and in Marcy, as you mentioned, sometimes sleep is not even doesn't help refresh you. Okay, thank you, Marcy.
With the fatigue, it actually is brought on even more so with the constant coughing, as you can tell, that it wears you down. Constant coughing all the time creates more fatigue, so it's kind of a vicious circle. In addition to that, I cannot sleep through the night, so I don't get a lot of rest at nighttime, and that unfortunately also contributes to fatigue as well.
Thank you. And is it the cough? What is it that you're not able to? What's impacting you not being able to sleep? Is it the cough?
My coughing.
Keeping you up? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. We have a hand over here.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline, and I'm 53 years old, and I've been battling this for 40 years. And so the fatigue is just the tip of the iceberg, because with the fatigue comes confusion. It comes with just so much you cannot even believe. My way of dealing with this after 30 years was I am blessed because hydrocodone makes me awake, not fall asleep. So I can do my housework and take care of my daughter, my stepdaughter that I homeschool. But obviously this is bad because who wants to operate under the influence almost every day of their life and not be able to drive? You know, my daughter goes to the NIH out here, and my husband cannot even let me drive her because what if I get tired? And either that or I'm under the influence, and it's just not a good idea. So it rolls into everything.
Thank you. Katie, did you
like to say something also on that note? Since the fatigue is so unpredictable, I also was driving. I tried to go back to work a couple of years ago, and I have a very good driving record that I just suddenly came on me. I went through a stop sign, got pulled over, and a few weeks later, I went to pick up my daughter at school, and I was speeding. I never had a speeding ticket in my life. But again, it came on suddenly. I didn't feel well. I was trying to go back to work and doing everything I wanted to do. And it's just hard to accept, to surrender, to give in, but that's how suddenly it comes upon you. And when you have a young child, I didn't get into, but when I first had my first MAC infections, the first few in the early years, I couldn't even look, doing my daughter's homework, check it. Big thing was rest up just so I could sign her papers. You know, in the beginning of the year, they give you a ton of papers. That was like a big accomplishment. That's how minimal energy. You know, when you go through chemo, I have a friend that went through chemo recently, and you feel beat for a period of time. You take off the weekend. 6 months later, you go back to work. There's no getting better and go back to work. You just go through ups and downs. So it's just, you know, I often call to it like the, you know, microbial prison, because you're never out of the sentence of, you know, we innocently got this disease. We took a shower one day and it totally changed her life.
Thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
Behind you, Pujita? Sorry.
And,
yep, we can hear you, Donna.
Yep. I think my fatigue comes from lack of sleep, finding a good position so I'm not wheezing, not so much coughing, but the wheezing is terrible, and mostly in a prone position. And what also keeps me up at night is the fear of the future, which Barbara had touched on, and being a pulmonary cripple, which I've been told I might be someday as a result of, they can't even operate on my lung. That's how bad it is. And they said if I do have a pneumonectomy, I'd become a pulmonary cripple. So the fear and the anxiety is what keeps me up at night.
Okay. I'd like to ask, is there a sort of, I know we heard that fatigue is abrupt, but we're also I'm hearing a sort of a daily battle with it too, a daily sense of fatigue, tiredness. Is that accurate, that you're also having a daily battle with fatigue? Okay. No, I'm seeing many head nods, but I'm also seeing a no here. 1 second, we have a.
I didn't know I would be talking. Mine is a little different. I always have bronchitis, seasonal change. I went to my doctor. He gave me my typical antibiotic.
And then as I was walking out, he said, you know what, let's take an x-ray of your chest, make sure you don't have pneumonia, which I did not have. But they found little nodules here and there, and the radiologist said since he had nothing to compare it to, he wanted a CAT scan every 6 months for 2 years, which I did. Never coughed, never sick. 18 months later, a cavity formed in the upper right. I saw a pulmonary specialist. He said, I'm doing a full PET scan to make sure it's nothing cancerous, but I think I know what you have, and you'll be on a lot of antibiotics for a long time. So I stayed on the cocktail of the 3 for 2.5 years, and by then I saw an infectious disease doctor, and he said, let's give your body a holiday from the drugs. Because I felt fine, but I never had a negative sputum. By then, I was diagnosed with MAC. Well, I walked out of the office. I think 2 minutes later, I started coughing. My husband was with me and was like, oh, my God, I just turned on the cough. So I coughed enough, I started bleeding a little, and scared me half to death. Still never fatigued to this day. I went to Denver. I saw Dr. Eisman. I saw Dr. Daly. They said because I'm so healthy, I had millions of tests. And I did have Dr. Mitchell did a lung resection of my upper right and my middle lobe. And I did very well with that and stayed on medicine another year or so. And I was negative for about 3.5 years. In this February, I had 1 positive sputum. Again, not sick really, but they have me back on my medicine. I've had now 7 negatives, but I have to stay on the meds. So I'm assuming I'll be on meds off and on the rest of my life.
Thank you, Deborah.
So that's my story.
Thank you, Deborah. And we'll definitely be hearing more about treatment regimens in topic 2. But you bring up cough, and that's a good lead-in to the other symptoms that you've all identified: chronic cough, coughing up blood, phlegm, and mucus, and then also breathing difficulties, which I know you had mentioned. So can we hear some perspectives on the cough? Tell us about how you're experiencing that cough. Is there a good day? Is there what triggers the bad day? Would anybody like to share? I thought I saw a hand here. Okay.
Hi. The cough is something I've had an ABI vest since 1999 that I had to wear for 3 to 5 hours a day to clear my lungs. And I've had the first flutter valve. I now have a brand new Aflo vest that you can actually walk around with and not sit at a corner 2 feet away from a wall for 3 to 5 hours a day. That brings on depression. I mean, who wants to sit in the corner for 4 hours a day? So now I have a new vest, but the cough causes so much pain. You're always, pulling muscles, and it's just, it makes you so tired. It leads right into the fatigue when you cough. It just creates like a horrible syndrome.
So the cough is bringing on pain, and it's also triggering the fatigue.
Yeah, if one of you put on a vest, one of the percussion types of vest, and you wore it for a half hour, it would do you all in. I mean, it would just do you in. Everybody would have to take a nap. And then to cough on top of it, each one of you at that table would need to take a nap. And take some Tylenol.
Okay, thank you. And your name?
My name is Jacqueline.
Jacqueline. Thank you, Jacqueline. We have a comment here.
I'm Dorothy, and 2 years ago, I started using the sodium chloride 7% solution twice a day, and I haven't had pneumonia since. But I cough a great deal, and the only thing that will stop it is a cough drop. Yesterday in the afternoon, I coughed 3 times. Twice I was on the phone, had to hang up and wait till I could get it under control before I called back. Twice this morning, I've been doing it too.
Okay, thank you, Dorothy. You have a comment here?
Hi, I'm Betsy. I have, here, the minute I start trying to talk, I start coughing. And I cough like episodes. Well, it'll go on for 5 or 10 minutes, just coughing. I mean, I walk up the street and suddenly I'm seized with this huge coughing episode. I just have to stop. People think I'm dying or something awful. They keep offering me lozenges, which really don't help much. Water, I carry water with me everywhere. That, it just doesn't stop. It doesn't stop the cough. So it's really affected my life in a horrible way in terms of socializing and even volunteering. Nobody even wants me around because you may say you're not contagious, but people don't believe that. Most people say, oh yeah, and I can clear a subway car or a bus. So, you know, if you want a seat, just watch me. So anyway, but it's exhausting, as everybody's been saying. It's really exhausting. And I'm quiet until I start trying to talk or eat. Even when eating seems to trigger a lot of coughing. So I don't know. I'm working on it from a lot of different angles. Swallowing therapy, acid reflux. I'm looking everywhere to try to deal with it, but so far, not much luck.
Thank you, Betsy. Can I ask you, how many episodes of coughing do you typically experience?
A day?
In a day?
Average day, maybe 4.
Or episodes?
At least. Well, I mean, it could be more, but
Right.
4, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with others about, 4 or so, just sounds like about 10, 15 minutes of coughing episodes a day? Does that sound similar to your experience? Okay, so I'm hearing some it depends, but I'm seeing head nods also. Okay, so we're hearing that talking, eating can trigger cough, weather changes, it sounds like. What other triggers to cough? We see some hands here. Yep.
Yes, mold, and I think that is the tie-in with the rainy weather. So I've noticed if I'm in the Caribbean or I went to Hawaii for our 50th wedding anniversary, rained the whole week, huge reaction. It was very dramatic. I was really upset that the place we were staying at, which had humidifiers, never offered dehumidifiers, never offered them. But I think the mold, I've talked with Joe about this before, I think they're doing some research in France, perhaps in Paris, one of the institutes, on this tie-in, and I'd like to see a little bit more of that.
Thank you, and that was Marcy, right? Okay, thank you, Marcy. So, continuing, oh, yes, Marilyn.
I have an extreme coughing story. Again, a story, and traveling changes dramatically when you have this disease. I was in treatment early on and coming in towards the end of a trip, and I got an exacerbation and was really sick and coughing very, very badly. And it was the end of the trip, and I got home and realized that I wasn't cognitive like I usually am. My mind was working properly, and I went to a meeting, and people said, you need to see a neurologist. And it turned out that I had a broken blood vessel in my brain. And they did everything to try to diagnose where that came from. You know, they went down behind the heart to see if there were any holes there and so forth and so on. And in the end, they said it's conceivable that it could have been from the coughing. And luckily for me, it went away in a week. I understand that that's called a mini stroke. They didn't call it that. They said a broken blood vessel. So, but the coughing can be really, really unbelievably extreme, especially during an exacerbation.
Thank you, Marilyn. We'll take one comment from Barbara, and then I'm going to check in with the web.
Well, I was just going to say, the first year I was coughing, I broke 2 ribs and a vertebrae in my back.
I was just going to say the same.
And so the coughing for me may start, 10 minutes of trying to clear it, but it could go on for a good 90 minutes, and I'm just down on the floor on my knees with grabbing my ribs, hacking. So it's not your standard little cough.
Barbara, is that that severe cough that you just mentioned that can last 90 minutes, is that something you experience on a daily basis, or how
It is.
frequently? Okay.
And I was even got a little fearful of coming up here. Usually I can delay it if I chew gum or something, but I would say 2 to 3 hours a day I'm coughing a lot, a heavy cough, trying to clear my lungs.
And is there a time of day that you
It doesn't
experience
matter.
it?
Sometimes using the aerobica, which is to shake your airways and clear your lungs, and I can start clearing my lungs, but then it never ends. You know, it's like an eternal fountain there that I'm coughing for 1 to 2 hours, and sometimes I just say to myself, well, enough, you know. I just start chewing gum and say, let's end this.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. And so when you mentioned about coughing so hard that you've broken some ribs, I saw a lot of head nods, but I just want to turn back to the audience. Can you, by show of hands, how many of you have experienced that sort of severe cough and you've broken ribs? And, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 hands. 8 hands. Okay, thank you. Let me check in with the web quickly to see what's coming in. What are our web participants saying?
So we have 115 participants on the web with us today, and many of them are echoing what we've been hearing in the room so far. They also say difficulty thinking is a problem. They discuss fatigue. One participant commented on sudden fatigue, which is when she just wants to put her head down on the steering wheel when she's driving. Another participant commented that it's like walking through molasses throughout the day. As far as triggers, we've heard weather again. Scents are a huge trigger that make them cough and give them shortness of breath. One participant noted that lying down, just flat, is a trigger as well for them, and so she's afraid to lay down. And another participant noted that it's just a full-time job trying to stay well, especially participants with reflux. This participant has to set an alarm clock after each time he drinks 5 ounces, just to make sure that he's able to take care of himself well.
Thank you for that. FDA panel, any questions? Okay. So, yes.
Nobody mentioned the coughing, which leads me sometimes to vomit.
Okay.
And which is a vicious cycle because I lose my appetite, I don't eat, and I can go for 2-3 days without eating anything. So it's like a vicious cycle. You know, I could cough so badly that I end up throwing up my guts.
And is the loss of, and you're losing the appetite because you're just not able to keep it down with the cough, and you don't feel like eating?
You just don't want to eat. You just have that total loss of appetite. And like I said, I can go for 2 days without eating. I'll drink a protein drink, cough, and it comes right up.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so let's look at some of, a few of you mentioned some other symptoms here, shortness of breath, breathing difficulties, and then a few of you also mentioned other symptoms not mentioned. So I'd like to open it up to see if you'd like to share with us some of the breathing difficulties that you mentioned here. What do you experience and how do you experience it?
Thank you. Shortness of breath impacts everything. I have to walk at my pace going down the street, or I end up very winded even when I do the suggested breathing. I cannot talk and walk because I just don't have enough air or talk on the phone. I have grandchildren, and the fatigue, the chronic fatigue, shortness of breath, impacts my interactions with them. And I don't know if you're going to get to loss of, not loss of appetite, but weight loss, which, since I'm on a diabetic diet, is impossible. I mean, because there's things that I would eat, that I enjoy eating, I cannot eat. So I have protein drinks and this and that, and I manage to just barely keep my weight at over, but I eat all day long. I have to work at it constantly, and since I'm watching how much sugar, it's turned into, I mean, all the other things that you pace yourself. So, you pick the primary thing you have to do that day. Every once in a while, I have a day where I go through things and get a bunch of things done. But mostly I do one thing and then I have to take a nap. And so I pretty much go about my business, but it certainly dominates everything I do.
And your name?
I'm Andrea.
Andrea, let me ask, you mentioned that you're not able to eat. Again, is it the coughing? We heard earlier that coughing leads to vomiting and that's leading to loss of appetite. What's leading to your loss of appetite?
I don't have a loss of appetite. I eat all the time, but it doesn't.
Oh, but the weight, okay, but weight loss, right.
It's affected by this diabetic diet. Before I was on it, I've been sick for 18 years. I've been on antibiotics constantly for, I guess, 9 years, 8 years, whatever. And my sputum is negative, but when I go off it, within 2 or 3 weeks, the MAI is back. Plus, nocardia and aspergillus, and so it's really a constant battle.
Thank you. Graham, Magna, do we have anybody that's waiting on the phone? Okay, so we'll take 2 callers on the phone. But before we go there, I'd like to ask if there's other symptoms that have not been mentioned through this polling. Is there something that you'd like to share? Philip, I saw you. Oh, let's hear. Marilyn?
One of the symptoms that I still am dealing with, often in support group, a lot of the people seem to have GERD and have been diagnosed with GERD. I'm not sure that I really have GERD, but I belch a lot. There seems to be air pockets in my system, and I'm not sure what causes it, but it does seem to be a symptom with most of us to have to deal with, and it's not acid reflux or anything like that. It's just like trapped air in parts of the body. I don't know how to explain it other than that.
Okay.
And I'm still dealing with that. Again, my sister can attest to that.
Do others experience that by a show of hands? Okay, gastric issues. I'm seeing a lot of. Oh, okay. Let's see. Keep your hands up real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. See, 14 hands, 15 hands raised for that. Okay. Other issues not mentioned? We have a hand back there. Back there, Sarah, with the black dress. Wait. Okay.
Somebody behind me?
No, you.
Hi, I'm Mel Peppers. It was bronchiectasis and then NTM diagnosis, like 10 years apart each. I get joint pain with the night sweats and the fever, and it's like really bad. So, and it comes and goes. So I just throw in joint pain, and I don't know if other people have that, as well as muscle fatigue and pain.
Okay. Let's do another show of hands. Joint pain. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seeing about 8 hands. And we saw others also identify. We have fever. Fever and night sweats. Okay. So it looks like others also experience that. Okay. Let's I know we're getting close to the break time here, so I'd like to see from our phone panelists if we have somebody lined up. So go ahead, Graham.
Operator, can you open the first line?
Yes, their line is now open. Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Okay, so I'm Esther Steinberg. I'm the coordinator and support group leader in Canada. And I want to thank you very much for this webcast because it allows many of us to have the access to information sharing that we would otherwise not have. In Toronto and across Canada, where the temperature has changed, I can see from all the patients that everybody is now getting sicker than they were 2 weeks ago and developing all the symptoms. Right now I'm watching you from my bed. I can't stop coughing. For a while I was able to come off the meds, but now I'm going to have to go on. Listening to everyone at the meeting, we all share the same symptoms, the same pains, the same concerns, and we're appreciative. The one thing I have to say, I know that Philip is there, and I have to add how grateful that we all are to Philip and his late wife, Fern, for all that they have done to bring this disease to the forefront, give us a voice that would not otherwise have been heard. Philip, if you can hear me, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comment.
I just,
Yep.
there isn't a lot that I can add. It's, you know, it's repeated. It's so common to all of us to watch all this going on, and hoping that one day that someone will develop a drug, something that would make our life easier. And I would say that from people that I know, 90% of the people push forward through all the symptoms and do whatever they can to give themselves what we now call a new normal life, and to keep up the good fight.
Thank you so much. There were a lot of people that were nodding along with you, so thank you for sharing that. And we have time for one more caller. So, operator, could you open up the line?
Yes, your line is now open. Thank you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I wanted to comment that many of us have what doctors refer to as an asthmatic component to the illness, and that's why one of the things that would bring on my coughing is exposure to a vast array of lung irritants, from diesel fumes to perfumes, anything sprayed that has scent in it, also VOCs or volatile organic compounds in glue, paint, etc. Air conditioning, sprayed sunscreen. Just drive my lungs wild to set off quite a hacking episode. And I don't think that's true of everyone, but it is certainly true for me. I was lucky enough to be a candidate and had a successful middle lobe lobectomy, which greatly improved my condition and reduced that sensitivity, but it's still there, and I fear in the future it may come back. But and even now, when I'm not as sensitive, I'm aware that those things do irritate my lungs, so I'm kind of scared of being in situations where those things are present. Cigarette smoke and campfire smoke are some of the worst, and unfortunately I can't camp anymore because of that. It's almost impossible to go camping in America without campfires around me. Anyway, thanks for letting me comment, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for your comment. So yes, and I believe at what you said on the phone, I know others have also mentioned that smells, different scents can trigger this. So thank you for sharing that. So we are now at break time, but thank you for an incredibly rich discussion on topic 1, and we'll see you back in 15 minutes for our topic 2 discussion.
Whoops, we should have gone back to presentation mode a while back. Oh well.
Yeah, I practiced a long time.
A little bit after we close it. I guess we could.
It's hard to really put everything into a 5-minute period.